Hey, welcome to Leadership Within, the moment to reflect on our own experience of leadership. I'm your host, TK, and I'm joined by...
Vanessa.
Hey, Vanessa. Thank you for joining me, as always.
Thank you for having me.
It's a wonderful thing that we have, hosting one after the other, and having this director's chair rotating between us. So this time I'm on it, and I've been reviewing my recent experiences, and I think there's something that I hope our listeners will enjoy reflecting on. So, as always, the question is if it relates to something that you have seen, because with one of my recent clients, I've observed one of the strong levers of power, of leadership, power, to be honest, it's even more applicable, of holding back information. Using access to information, to data, to, certain secrets as a method of exerting power, as a method of rewarding or even punishing people, as a method of motivating and giving goals. When you reach a certain level, a level of trust, you'll be allowed access to this secret room, the secret squirrel society, and they're really using it quite a lot. They're a very structured and hierarchical organization, and being invited to the club that knows is something that a lot of people covet. And the interesting thing is, everyone else is just left to gossip. I'm wondering if, you find that a popular pattern in organizations.
I think the laughter is probably cosmic and therefore, yes. I think information is often given or withheld as a kind of mechanism of power, whether that's intentional or unintentional. I don't know.
Well, in this particular example that I have in mind, it's definitely intentional. But what is unintentional is the consequence. Because people are, most people, including the people that are in these groups, are quite fed up with that. And yet no one can break the cycle. The challenge is that if you're doing it for too long of a time, it becomes a norm. That's one thing, but it really demotivates people, and it just creates gossip. It just creates people inventing their own reality. Rumors spread, most are false, and even though people like to keep these secrets in, it causes them much more disruption than is needed. And I'm just wondering, many organizations still persist in such a method of leading with the gating of knowledge, yet I believe it's counterproductive. So why do people do that, you think?
Well, I think you said it in the thing where you talked about, well, it's power. And so if I have information, I have a power over you, don't I? If I have information that I'm not necessarily going to share with you, my sense is that gives me a leg up in my status or, the power that I hold. And therefore, that for some people might feel good. It might give a sense of grandiosity.
So I'm just wondering, like in this case, if you are not if you don't have a formal role as a leader, or you don't feel like, quite often we talk about confidence as a leader, the energy of a leader. Will it actually help people if they are not formal leaders to be the custodians of certain secrets? Does it actually create a certain attitude or respect in the community? Maybe that's one of the ways that one can feel a leader, because they know something others don't.
Yeah, I mean, I can only talk for personal experience when I don't, when I've been in that situation where I feel like someone's told me a secret that no one else knows, and then I feel yucky with that. It's like, I don't want to hold that, the energy of that, the desire to get that off my chest, so to speak, is huge. So it's like, I kind of feel like when someone shares a secret with you, that is, like why are they sharing it with you? And then what does that leave you with in terms of the holding of that? And so,
a burden, right?
Yeah, my experience of when that's happened to me personally has been really uncomfortable. Like a leader has said something about someone else in the team or something, that something's going to happen and they don't know it. And, it's not like there's an NDA against, signed around it, but it's just, this feels yucky.
Well, it does, right? Because, sometimes it's quite pertinent to the people you might be talking to. And the fact is that you're withholding. Right? There's conflicting loyalties, aren't there, right? It might be something that they would really appreciate to know. And yet, we're not telling them. So it's so sometimes it's best not to know, even though we crave this knowledge. It's actually best not to go there. The interesting thing, on the other hand, is, well, what I find is quite often, for instance, in an organization I work with, there's a lot of freelancers. And there's also equally or even more employees. And the relationship is a bit different, right? Theoretically, as a freelancer, one would say you do have more freedom. You are able to be self-directed and independent. And as such, the actual client, in this particular case for employees, the employer, has much less leverage over you. And the knowledge of that makes some people quite more confident. Because, theoretically, it might not be a secret, but the thing is that, the leverage they have over you is quite less than they have over others. You're letting yourself believe in that, and that can increase confidence, can't it?
Yeah, I think it can increase this sense. I mean, I use the word grandiosity, but I think it's like almost like an esteem that's built on the knowing. I'm in the know. I'm in with the people that decide and discern and wield power. And I think it feels uncomfortable to me, and yet it's also a reality, right?
Well, it most certainly is. Unfortunately, I think any way that leaders, they don't feel like that confident themselves, can influence their own environment, as in wield power, chances are some or most might gravitate to it. So is it that leaders that feel like they're really, I won't say powerful, but confident in their own style and results of leadership, do you think they don't need to do that?
I don't know, because I think intent comes down. There's an awful lot around intent with this, because there are situations where you genuinely can't share information with people. And I think in those situations, the worst thing you can do is say, well, I know something, but I can't share it with you. That just feels really shitty to me. Why say anything? But I think if the intention is manipulation or to play some kind of power game, then that's when it gets really, really tricky, isn't it? And I think that's when it's like, what you said something really interesting earlier, which I kind of wanted to make a note of that question, because it made me think of other situations that I'm in at the moment, which was what's being withheld and why is it being withheld? Sometimes there's a genuine reason for things being withheld, but if there's a genuine reason, then we wouldn't necessarily know that it's being withheld. But I sometimes wonder if people can't. Sometimes, if I was being generous to somebody in that situation, maybe their anxiety around holding something big's going to happen and it's going to impact people, and I can't. I'm really anxious about that, and I just need to talk to someone. I think that's a really human thing, and that to me is why leaders probably need a reflexive space or a supervisory space in some capacity to be able to offload that safely to the right people.
Well, that's quite true, right? Yeah, we as coaches can definitely offer that. And it's a great thing if a leader has this capacity, because, well, sometimes with their peers, the situation is as such that they can't always confide, right? So having a third party that you can actually talk about, whichever terms, is definitely quite helpful. I've seen that, and myself, I've been, and so have you, a coach for quite a few leaders. That's quite a bit of the conversations we're having, I'm sure. But the interesting thing to me over here is like what you said, that I know something, but I won't tell you. On the other hand, like if you have if you're a good leader, you have good intentions, but there are genuine things that you can't talk about because they're a private matter of another employee, for instance, right? And it's prohibited, and rightfully so, to talk about such matters with other people, or other things that are strategic, let's say, confidential piece of information that rightfully so is being withheld, and you're being asked directly. Well, the interesting thing is, right, I do believe that giving an answer that's just gaslighting or untruthful, rather than saying, well, I can't really comment on that, addressing it directly, I think the directness here is a better option.
I agree.
Even though, but it is still a difficult one, isn't it, right?
Well, and I think it can be done with, I can't address this directly, and I get that that's really frustrating, or that's really uncomfortable, or, I think speaking to the emotion that is created by the fact that I'm in a situation where I cannot divulge things, speaking to the potential impact of that, I think is helpful. I had a leader once say that the best leader he worked for was a guy who, when it was really, they were going through different reorgs and different things, and when it was really difficult, would say, yeah, this is really shit. Right now it's really shit. And he said it just kind of eased his nervous system and just kind of went, okay, thank you. Someone's seeing me. Someone's seeing that this is really hard, that I know you've got, we're going to go through something, and something, and I don't know something. But I think the tendency is to avoid any acknowledgement of what it creates for people. And that's where I think we miss a trick.
Well, I guess it's because it might sound like we're pushing a boundary. If the boundary is set, clearly that I'm not commenting in any form on this particular piece of knowledge, like, layers, whatever it might be. And then I say it's really shit. It's just like I'm putting a toe in the door and just like, pushing the boundary a bit. Like some people, I'm not saying would exploit it, but would see it as an encouragement that there is leeway and some flexibility in this border, the boundary that we set ourselves when it comes to, keeping things confident. And yeah, it's a hard one, right? Because, it's easy then to be, a lot of leaders, what they do is they create trust, and obviously great relationships are based on trust, and keeping something from one another is a violation of trust, right? Even though obviously a leader in an organization has dual loyalties for the people that look up to them for leadership and the organization. And yet it causes a difficult thing. So maybe signaling that they're flexible with the boundary, even by saying it's shit, may cause some, why aren't you saying more? A difficult thing to navigate, I believe. And, I find it difficult too, because especially when you're more empathetic towards people, as you can see them being angsty, you can see that, there's a lot of uncertainty. You would love to help. And yet, you know better. You know that, it's a boundary that it's so difficult to go back on once you cross it.
100%.
And yet you want to keep trust. So,
it's like
as
an
you said,
ethical
right?
dilemma, isn't it? I'm also noticing, I'm wondering, like, what made this a topic that you wanted to discuss now? Like,
the reason is that, sometimes, and, this is the case with my client, and I understand why, the opinion amongst people is that with a particular thing is just being pushed too far, right? It's just there's a particular topic that's happening on a strategic level, that it's being kept under wraps, but it's being kept for a bit too long, and it's starting to fester a bit. Right, the rumors, the whole, the culture of gossip over there, and the snippets of knowledge, and it's obviously dissolving in the fabric of the organization, and it's just like, all right, if you do it quick enough and strategically, it might make sense, but if it goes on for months and months and months, and there's like, it's just quite unhealthy, isn't it?
Yeah,
when you think about it.
Definitely.
And it can become a bit of a parody of itself. It's just like...
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of energy is getting drained in it, and, it's reactive and it's protective, and yeah, it's not helpful, is it?
And I guess you can't really easily roll it back, right? You've created this club which served a purpose, so you can make decisions that impact quite a few people in a smaller... Okay, fine, makes perfect sense. But then, like... how do you unravel it? What's the way to release the tension?
Well, so I don't know. It's interesting because it's making me think about where someone has kind of shared their truth and their view about things with me. So it's information about their view on the world, and I've thought, I don't want to know this. Do you know what I mean? Like afterwards, my reflection is, I wish you'd not told me that, because now I can't get it out of my head, and I can't stop seeing that person without seeing them through that lens. So for me, what I'm starting to realize through this conversation is I should stop that person in their tracks and say, before you share this with me, are you, like, I'm not actually comfortable. I'm not sure I'm the right person. And I've never had I don't think I've had the courage to say that yet with them. But I'm realizing through this conversation, I have a responsibility as the receiver of that information to go, ugh, this doesn't feel good, and I know where this is going to end up. It's toxic. And I think the insecure part of me, that when someone in authority has shared that with me previously, has kind of thought, oh, I'm in the club. Right? They obviously really trust me. And yet there's another part of my brain going, well, actually, they're probably doing that shit about you too.
Well, that's exactly what I was thinking, right? Oh, I've been offered a ticket to the club.
Yeah.
The special bathroom for people that know. I was like, it felt exhilarating. But
it is toxic. I think it is toxic. And I think...
Do I really want to be there, right?
Yeah, and I think I love what you're saying about boundaries, because I'm really aware that I need to work on my own boundaries of certain things. And this is an example of one where I feel in this particular dynamic, the boundary is crossed with the person in the position of ultimate power. And I am not saying I'm not okay with it. And that's where I need to, instead, what I'm then trying to do is I'm sucked into a dynamic and I'm trying to change their worldview about things. And I'm like, why am I even bothering with that? That's a waste of time.
For sure, the things that go inside the club, not the prettiest. But we're supposed to say yes, So, there's an opportunity. We're invited in, go. I was like, this is bloody hard to say no.
I think it's screw the club, right? We don't want to be in the club.
But having the instinct, right? It's not like, think about it. There's an open ticket. They're inviting you in to swear the oath of secrecy. And it's like just happening. You're in. And to have the instinct to say no to something that obviously, it's so coveted in the organization, and a sign of great trust and respect and, whatever you want to say. I was like, to have in this moment the ability to say, hold on a minute. Do I really want to be there? Like, if you say no, people may be taken aback. What the hell is going on with this person?
Yeah,
would they say no?
I get that. And I think that would be my fear, thinking that. But I also think I'm now at the stage where it's like, what do I actually want to stand for? And I think I'm really in that place where I realize that I can be braver, not because I'm in some really financially secure position where it doesn't matter, but actually I need to stand for something. in this chapter of my life and my leadership, and standing for what is ethically okay with me and not, I think matters. And so for me, it's a kind of calling forth energy.
It's such a beautiful thing to be able to do that. I mean,
I'm not doing it
as
yet. That's
always.
what I'm saying.
Well, it's
I'm aware that I've got to
aspirational
do
then.
it. Yeah, exactly.
Well, all right. So, I do have a similar aspiration, although thank you for naming it. What I'm wondering, though, is like, if that's, there are so many situations where making a decision from this particular mindset, this particular way of showing up would be amazing. But if we're talking about this particular, extended hand and someone like, giving you the sign to walk into a room where it's the club that, many people covet, to be able to make these decisions on the fly and be guided by that. Well, in my case, it might require a bit of rewiring. I'm just wondering, is there anything that you've seen that helps you to pause and say, hold on, maybe that's not for me?
I think my felt sense. So I do know when something feels uncomfortable, but I think I've got very used to overriding that felt sense. And I think I was having a conversation yesterday with someone because I'm feeling a dynamic in a situation where I think, oh, this is not like there's withholding going on. I can feel it.
Mm-hmm.
And their invitation to me was like, what roles are you playing here, Vanessa? What inner roles are you playing? And it's like, oh, I can see it. I'm stepping into mom, and I'm stepping into, all these different roles come up, right? And I think that constellation of what parts of me are being sucked in here, and what roles am I about to play into when someone says, ooh, guess what? Or, I shouldn't be telling you this, but. And then so for me, it's like realizing that a part of me really wants to know and wants to be in the club, but another part of me doesn't. And letting the part that's got integrity and authenticity lead. And it's so easy to say, and it's a massive practice. Because I think the feeling that I'm left with afterwards is just yuck. And then actually it's mistrust, because I don't know that I can count on you anymore as a leader, because you do this thing where you pull people in and you tell them stories about things.
Yeah, I guess there's another part of it, right? Even if you go with this particular part of you, the leading with integrity, the other part is still there, and for me it's like regret, right? You've made the decision, but you might question yourself. Why did you not take the opportunity? Oh my God, the situation would be inside the club, and it's just like, well, maybe not, right? Who knows what would happen if I stepped and went on this path?
Know.
And it's just like forgiving yourself, right? Okay, well, I did it. This was the moment I made such a decision. I can reflect on that, but there's no point. I just need to forgive myself if it was a part of me that was also afraid, right? Because, it's easy to stand on the principle of integrity, but all these feelings, I guess, are intertwined within me. There's fear, there's anxiety, there's like, so much going on, and the decision, especially in the moment, can't always be right. So it's just forgiving yourself.
Exactly. But also the fact that you get to reset the dynamic, so it's like, okay, maybe that time I wasn't able to say, actually, I really don't want to know this information. Go talk to someone else, just kind of recognizing like, wow, okay, I can actually go back and say, do you know what, when, we had that conversation about that, I left that feeling not very good. And I'm wondering if in the future, I don't think I'm the right person for you to connect with around those issues. I think it doesn't have to be in the moment. I think we can course correct.
Yeah. Even though some moments are a watershed, right? You're in the club or out, you accept an invitation.
Yeah. Well, we all want to be in the club, right?
Well, and that's the thing, do we, right? And there is, as we're nearing the end of this episode, there's one particular thing I'm taking away, and I'm inviting you, our dear listener, to think about, like, okay, fine, there's a natural, if that's the example, there's a natural inclination to be in the circle, be in the club. But do you really want to? When the question arises, when someone invites you to, is that the place you really want to be? That's a big thing I'm taking away, and I'm hoping that will also help you. What about you, Vanessa? What are you taking away?
Yeah, I think what I'm taking away from the conversation is this idea that actually, Vanessa, you can stand up and say no,
yes,
like stop, and that I don't have to then worry about how someone else receives that, but actually maybe that is part of my growth in my leadership.
There you go. Thank you so much for sharing, Vanessa. And for our listeners, thank you so much for being here with us. As always, we hope to see you again for our next episode of Leadership Within. Cheers. Bye-bye.